Welcome back to String and Story. My name is Holly Ann Knight, and it's my job to guide you to quilt with confidence. Welcome back to our Polaris quilt along. Today we get to actually start sewing. I am so excited. Now, if you are joining me live, do go ahead and say hi in the chat. I'm just reaching over here to hit refresh so that I can pull y'all up on my computer and see all your lovely comments and questions as we go along. And we are going to get started in just a second. Now, you'll see here on the tray in front of me, I have all of my fabric from my Polaris quilt. I am making a very big, very scrappy Ruby Star Polaris. We do still have a few kits here in the shop. I know we have a couple of those Ruby Star kits. We have some solids kits. There are a couple favorite flowers kits. So if you are just now joining us, there is plenty of time to grab your pattern, grab your kit, and join in on the fun, okay? You will observe I have not yet finished cutting mine out because it is so big, but we've made enough progress that we can definitely get started today. Today we're gonna be working on our quarter square triangles, and we're gonna continue making different units each week for the next couple of weeks before we actually get to the part of assembling this gorgeous quilt. All right, let me see who is here. I see Jan, I see Terry, I see continuing on, I see Karen, I see Susan. Hello, Lydia. Hello. Tiger Mama 93. It's always good to see you. All right, welcome, y'all. I am gonna dive right in. We're gonna do a few of these together. One quick note before we get started. As you know, if you were here with me last week, I was doing my math on the fly about how many strips and squares we needed to cut per block out of our fat quarters. And either last week I suggested that we cut extra 3-inch squares, or yesterday my math was wrong. So if you followed my directions to a T from last week, you may have cut some extra 3-inch squares. When I was doing that math again yesterday, I was like, I'm unsure of myself now. So just kind of tuck that in the back of your mind that won't affect what we're doing today. But as we go on in the coming weeks, if you follow those directions and have some extra 3-inch squares, that may be what happened. The other thing that I am going to note, just full disclosure, I have a sinus infection. I'm on a lot of medication for said sinus infection. So if I pitch a coughing fit in the middle of this, I'm gonna step to the side and take some meds and drink some water and then step right back. So don't panic if that happens. I'm hoping that, I can positively jinx it by talking about it at the beginning of our live and then make it through our time together without coughing. That's my goal, all right? Good morning, Janice. Good morning, all. It is so good to see you. Catherine Marco, huzzah. Fabulous. All right, ready? Let's do this. Okay, if you did what I demonstrated last week and you made little block kits, grab one of those little kits for me. In this, you're gonna have a couple of big squares, some rectangles, and then some smaller squares, all for your stars. So these are all colors 1 and 2 if you're following along in our pattern, okay? We're gonna be on page 3 of the pattern today. This is the very first step of the actually starting to piece things. And we're making this quarter square triangle. That is the center piece that is in the middle of the block. Now, what you'll see today is that when we make quarter square triangles, the way that we're going to do them, we make them 2 at a time. And that's why, as we've been going through step by step, I have reiterated over and over again that in a 30-block Polaris quilt, you have 15 different blocks, because we have cut out enough fabric to make 2 identical stars, so we don't waste those extra quarter square triangles, okay? So grab your largest squares for me. You should have 1 in color 1 and 1 in color 2. And separate those from their friends for just a second, okay? All right, and I have tried very hard to position this so you can see what I'm doing. So I'm gonna be kind of stepping to the side and stepping back. I'm gonna try to stay in frame as we're going. But I want you to take those large squares, I want you to put them right sides together, okay? This is gonna be a familiar process for many of you, all right? And then take a couple of pins and pin them together. I will say, y'all know me, I am a done is better than perfect kind of quilter. And doing these quilt alongs is so good for me because it encourages me to do it right. and that's healthy. That's a healthy thing. Okay? Then, do I have a longer ruler handy? I'm gonna find a longer ruler. This one is not gonna quite cut it. let's find, this is a very long ruler. All right, big ruler. All right, we're gonna draw a line corner to corner on our square here, okay? Now, there's a couple of options. You could use a Hera marker and make a little crease, or you can use a number 2 pencil. Personally, I'm a big fan of the number 2 pencil. It's so easy, it's easier to see. It takes less effort to draw. All right, and then just like that, we've got our line drawn. Now, before we start stitching, public service announcement. If you do not remember the last time you changed your needle, I would like you to change your needle now. If you do not remember the last time you cleaned the dust out of your bobbin race, I would like for you to do that now. Now, shameless plug, one of the Amazing Rockstars, Gail, put me onto these Nook and Cranny cleaning tools. These have little silicone brushes. They look like little mascara wands, but they're made out of this really soft, flexible silicone. And if you've ever used like a silicone baking mat or anything like that, you know it's a little bit sticky. Like that's just the natural texture of this material. These are incredible for cleaning your sewing machines. It's $5 for the pack. We just got a whole bunch of these into the shop. I'll put this link in my stories afterwards. But if cleaning out your machine is a bit of a pain in the butt to you and you tend to put it off or you don't feel like you ever quite get all the lint, these have been a game changer for me of getting up in there, especially in a machine like this. This is Bernat B08. It's a little cavernous in there, right? And then once you're done, you can pluck the lint off the end and then you can just wash them gently with soap and water. They air dry and they're ready to use again. So I find that they hold up a little bit better than traditional brushes. They get more lint than traditional brushes and they're super fun. So shameless plug at the end of our public service announcement, please change your needle and please clean out your bobbin race from all that lint if you have not done that recently. If your machine calls for oil, go ahead and do that too. We're right here at the start of a brand new project, so this is an ideal time to do those things, okay? Cool, huzzah, all right. Per your blog, cutting it twice. I'm not sure what that means, Jan, because I missed what I said, but that's okay. All right, we've drawn our line. Now, sew 1/4 inch on either side of said line. If you have a little stray piece of fabric handy that you can use as a leader ender, that will be your friend. You're going to observe today that I'm gonna do these one at a time. This is not how I do it in real life, okay? So my goal this evening after my kids go to bed is to finish cutting out all of this. And then what I can do is I can just chain piece all the way through, right? So what that would mean is that I could feed all of my 1/4 square triangles like this through one after the other, turn around and go the other way to sew on the other side of the line, and do that without breaking thread, okay? It's much, much, much more efficient to do it that way. But for the sake of teaching, this makes it easier to see what I'm doing, okay? So I have stitched on either side of the line. Oh yes, okay, so Jan, so you did a slightly different method per the blog. There's like 4 different ways to make these, okay? So you can make them how we're doing it today. You can pre-cut these into triangles and then piece them together. You can use Bonnie Hunter's Essential Triangle tool. There's so many options. All right, and then we're gonna cut on the line. Now, those of you who have, pieced a quilt or two, you're like, girl, you just made half square triangles. Yes, I did. And then we're gonna turn them into 1/4 square triangles. When we press these, it doesn't matter which fabric we press them to. If you have a lighter and a darker one, maybe go with the darker, but press them the same direction, all right? So we're gonna let that iron heat up for just a second. I'm gonna take a slurp of water. If you have any questions thus far, please feel free to ask them. What I love about the step that we're getting to in this Polaris quilt, right? The cutting is the arduous hump to get over when you're making this quilt. And if you've already done all your cutting, and I know some of you have because you've been sharing amazing pictures on social media, and once I get mine the rest of the way done, there's just so much chain piecing and it comes together so quickly, and that is very satisfying. All right, I'm gonna press mine here. Now, I know y'all can't quite see my pressing mat, but I'm gonna talk you through what I'm doing. First, I like to iron my triangle flat with the seam still closed. Then, I'm gonna open it up and I'm gonna finger press into place. And then I press again with the iron. What we want to do is we want to focus on mostly doing a firm downward pressure with our iron. We don't want to do a lot of ironing back and forth like this. We run the risk of distorting the fabric, okay? The reason that I have settled on this as my personal favorite method for quarter square triangles is because it minimizes bias edges, right? At this point, all of these sides are still with the grain, and that just makes it a little bit easier, in my opinion. Any of the methods where you cross cut, you do end up with a little bit of a bias edge, and you have a little extra risk of stretching. Susan says, what are the name of the cleaning tools? They are the Nook and Cranny cleaning tools. And like I said, I'll drop a link up in my stories when we're done. And that will make it a little easier. Now, here's where you gotta pay attention to what you're doing, okay? So the reason we pressed those the same way, right? I pressed towards my little purple flower side, right? So these are pressed the same way, is because I'm going to rotate these so that the stars touch the flowers and my seams nest together, okay? And I'm gonna pin them that way. I'm gonna pin right across that seam so that they can't move. Let me put it down so that I, can feel what I'm doing here. All right. Like so. And then my pins are across those seams. I'm going to mark and sew again this a direction. And then when we open them up, they will be magically quarter square triangles, okay? Now, if you are like me and you are a whole human, your points on these squares may not have lined up perfectly. That's okay. Get it as close as you can for this marking line, because we're gonna trim these at the end anyway, okay? So once again, 1/4 inch to either side. I'm sewing today on the Bernat B08 straight stitch sewing machine. This is the new machine from Bernat. Some of y'all who pre-ordered, you've been getting your machines. We've got a few more that'll go out later this week. And I am, as I just go right over my seam there and catch it because I'm going fast and talking at the same time. I love this machine. I love sewing fast. I love the power of a straight stitch machine. It is just a delight. Really need to, there we go. All right, and then once again, we're gonna cut on that line, okay? Now, sneak peek, there's our quarter square triangle, okay? So now, when I go to press these this time, I'm going to pop this seam, okay? And because we cut across it, it should be pretty easy to do that. So that when I press, right, I'm gonna press one this a direction and one this a direction, and we'll end up with that cute little 4 patch in the middle. Can y'all see that? That's called spinning your seam, and it minimizes the bulk right there in the middle. And same thing, we want to do more pressing than ironing if we can help it. And the biggest thing, here's the trickiest thing on these quarter square triangles, right? Is making sure that your seams are all the way open. So I do not mean on the back, opening your seam and pressing it open. I mean here on the front, making sure there's no extra fabric hiding right here, right? It's really easy for these to end up kind of creased on themselves, and there's actually extra fabric hiding in there. You want to make sure that it is pressed all the way over, so you've got a really flat block, okay? Like so. All right, do the same thing with the other one. Pop that little seam. So I just grab it right in the middle and kind of twist a little till I can see that 4 patch, and then that will show me which direction to press my seams, right? Like it lines it up for me, it makes it real easy. And then you'll notice that those seams are kind of in a spiral. And it just makes it a lot easier when we go to piece this into our block, that there's no doubled up seams. They're not as thick, okay? And I press from the back first and then from the front. When I'm pressing from the front, I will ever so gently kind of tug to make sure I don't have any fabric hiding in there, all right? And then we're gonna trim these puppies to 4.5 inches. Now, when I'm trimming, I'm gonna use the 45-degree line on my ruler, okay, to line up on my diagonal here, okay? And that way I know this is gonna be tricky because I have a very large ruler and a very small space because I left my favorite trimming ruler at home. I think we've talked about this before. This is the conundrum of having multiple sewing spaces and not necessarily wanting to have duplicates of everything. But here's what I'm gonna do. So I'm gonna measure my block. I've lined up that 45-degree line across the diagonal of the block, okay? Mine right now are at about 5 inches. So I need to lose a total of 1/2 inch, which means I'm gonna take about 1/4 inch off each side. So I will take that ruler and slide it on the 45-degree angle until I am at 4 3/4, give or take, and trim my block. Whoop, and hopefully it won't slide like it just did. Okay. Voila. Then I will turn it and do the same thing with the other side. Line up that 45-degree line, and this time I'm gonna line it up right at 4.5, the size I actually want things trimmed to. I can tell where my ruler slipped. I'm gonna have to do a little bit more trimming. Like I said, this is easier with a not so big ruler. All right, and let's check mine one more time. From this side, because I think I've got a little more I need to take off. Okay, remember to measure twice, cut once, please. You cannot put it back on with these puppies. There we go. Okay. Then we're nice and trimmed up. We're nice and square. And we have the center of our first block. Eek! All right, you'll trim the other one and then continue repeating this all the way through. All right, I'm gonna do one more set of these 1/4 square triangles to make sure that y'all have gotten to see the step-by-steps. And I'm gonna answer questions while we're doing this set. So let's go through. Da, da, da. Hello, Margot. The seams are not pressed open, correct? We are pressing to the side. Hello, Roberta. Have I used a tucker trimmer to cut square triangles? I have not, Carolyn. I have heard of so many amazing trimmers. And y'all know this about me. I am very slow to add new gadgets to my collection, if you will. My favorite trimming tool is an 8.5 inch square ruler. Like really and truly. And that's the one that I left at home, unfortunately. All right, let's go through one more time. So take those big squares, put them right sides together, and pin. I have a lovely pin cushion here that I made recently. It is a foundation paper pieced economy block with a little gusset and a back added, and I filled it with walnut shells, and I love it. It's the little things, right? Okay, so once you've got those right sides together and you have them pinned, mark corner to corner. This step is just like making half square triangles. In fact, the first thing we are doing is making a pair of half square triangles, okay? Jan says, should we go by the directions on the pattern for blocks? There's several ways for flying geese, and should we use the directions for the pattern or your blog? Use the directions in the pattern because that is what I've calculated yardage for. Yep. And in the pattern, we do 4 at a time flying geese, and you need 4 to make 2 blocks. So you come out with the perfect number, and it makes it a lot easier. So yes, Jan, go by that. Great question. Yes, if you are following along with our Quilt Along emails, then all of the emails that you're going to get about making these different types of blocks include several different sets of directions. I do recommend for making this pattern to stick to the method that is used in the pattern to make sure you have enough yardage. But I think it's good to be aware of different ways of doing this. Great question. All right, once we have sewn 1/4 inch to either side of that line, we're going to slice down the middle. And then we're going to press. And Margot, this is the question that you were asking. They're not pressed open, they're pressed to the same side. So in the case of this, I'll probably press to this little star side, okay? So I set my seam first, pressing with it closed, and then open it up and press with that seam to one side. Like so, okay? And I'm gonna repeat the exact same thing on the other half square triangle, so pressing to the same side. That's super important because that is how you're going to nest them together for this next step, okay? If you have a clapper handy, putting a clapper on here to make these really crispy and flat is a great idea, all right? So we have these, we're gonna turn them so that the stars go to the flowers and the flowers go to the stars, and that will make our seams nest together. Drop some pins across the seams. It is okay if your points do not perfectly line up. Just nest those seams, get those points pretty darn close, because as you saw, we trim off quite a bit at the end to make them really square. Yeah. What type of wool ironing pad do you use? This is actually not a wool pad. This is just a regular ironing board. I have the Ironmatic ironing board, which I will be putting up a review of soon. It is fancy and I love it. So Ironmatic is actually also based here in Atlanta. It's a woman-owned company. And they make these wider, longer ironing boards. They have this awesome caddy on the back that can hold your iron, your starch. I usually put my beverage there as well, so it's nice to have my water cup handy. And I use an Oliso iron. So I have the Oliso Mini today. I also have the big Oliso irons, and I love them. They get hot, 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 hot. Yeah. So it's not a wool pad. It's just a regular ironing board. I found that I like that better because the wool mats can pull heat and moisture through onto furniture. And I don't want my furniture or my cutting mats warping. So I have a separate ironing surface. Great questions. Jan asked how Ian is doing post-surgery. He is all healed up and doing great. So yes, that was it was a very smooth procedure. Thank you for asking. For those of you wondering, my son had tubes put in his ears last week, which was unfortunate but necessary. So we will find out next week if it resolved the issues with his hearing, okay? So I marked again. So if my pins across my seams are on either side, I marked across the other way with my line, and I'll hold this up and show y'all so you can see again. And I'm sewing to 1/4 inch to the side of that line. So see how my seams are here, and I'm now sewing across the other way on either side of that line. Yes. Perfect. Pull those pins out, and we're gonna cut on the line. Now I will note on this B08 that I'm using, the Bernat B08 sewing machine, fully mechanical, straight stitch, 1600 stitches per minute. Can you tell that I love it? It has a scant 1/4 inch foot. So if you are making these and you have, kind of a full 1/4 inch on yours, you may notice that when you go to the trimming step, you're not trimming off quite as much. You should still be trimming off a couple of threads on each side just to square everything up, all right? So then we're gonna take these and we go from the middle and we go pop, and we make that little 4 patch. And when we make that little 4 patch, you can see how it guides us as to where to press those other seams. And you wanna just make sure, again, that those seams are all the way open. So not open as in opening up the seam on the back, but opening as in making sure there's no fabric folded in where the seams meet. And I will show you what I mean from the front in just a second. Oh, this is gonna be so pretty. I'm so excited. Okay, y'all know I've had the vision for this quilt for like 2 years and I'm finally getting to make it. So on the back, my seams are spun, right? So they go in a lovely little spiral with a 4 patch in the middle. When I say make sure your seams are all the way open in this context, I mean making sure there's no fabric hidden here in these seams, okay? Make sure that there's no folds or pleats or anything in there, all right? Then we're gonna do the same thing with the other one. One y'all says, love this quilt. Me too. This is one of my favorites. Because like I said, once you get the cutting done, it's all chain piecing. It comes together so quickly. We are gonna have so much fun over the next couple of weeks getting all these bits made. And then it's like candy. Once you start assembling the blocks, it's just such a treat to see what each one looks like. And you start to get little sneak peeks with these quarter square units. And it just gets me so excited. All right, ta-da! And there you have it, folks. It is that easy to make quarter square triangles. Don't forget to trim them. Trimming is going to be very important. Remember we talked last week about how we've done a couple of quilt-alongs recently, right? And with both Lanterns of Hope and with Dogwood Blossoms, we were making really big blocks with really big pieces, which means you have a pretty decent margin of error, right? There's a lot of ability to fiddle with those to make things fit together. These are much smaller blocks with much smaller pieces, so accuracy is going to matter. That does not mean that you need to be a perfectionist. That does not mean that your inner mean grump needs to wake up in your head and start being all cranky with you if it is not absolutely perfect. But it does mean that we want to make sure that we trim. So don't forget to trim those units down using that method that I just talked you through with that 45-degree line across corner to corner on your ruler to trim 2 sides and then the other 2. So make all of your quarter square triangles this week, get them all trimmed up, and honestly, you'll be really far along towards having this quilt ready to put together, okay? Jan says, I think I have enough left in the kit to make another one, just not the background and the lighter squares. I'll see what I can do with it, very scrappy. I love that, Jan. Yeah, for these, for the fat quarters, we definitely tried to be generous because we wanted to understand that, you know, cutting errors happen, trimming errors happen, and in a quilt where that precision is gonna matter, if something goes really sideways, I wanted you to be able to cut out extra. So maybe you'll have a really scrappy backing on the quilt. Who knows? I'm sure something fun can happen. I don't know if y'all saw the Sawtooth stars that I was showing off yesterday. I recently made them with the Snack Shack fabric, but some big Sawtooth stars on the back would also be really pretty. So a few ideas. All right, Rockstars, any last questions that I can answer before we wrap up our time together today? I'm just glancing over here. I really enjoyed those stars too, Jan. I love a star block. Star blocks in all their forms are some of my favorites, so that's what's awesome. All right, enjoy this week. Practice marking those, you know, corner to corner lines, sewing 1/4 inch on each side. This is a great opportunity to practice your scant 1/4 inch seam and to practice spinning your seams to get that lovely little 4 patch on the back and to practice those trimming techniques. So lots of learning opportunities this week, lots of chain piecing in your future. Have fun. I will see you back here next Wednesday. Don't forget to check my stories later this afternoon too. I'll put some resources up there. And if you've not cleaned out your machine recently, get your hands on some of these Nook and Cranny cleaning tools. Make sure your machine is oiled and cleaned out, oiled, new needle as we get started with a new project, okay? Let's see. Margot says, I found a fat quarter of blacks, taupes, grays, and creams. Ooh, that sounds amazing. Ooh. Margot, send me a picture and we will figure out a great background idea. Why pin? Because it's going to keep things from moving around. It's going to make it a lot more accurate. We want to have room to trim. And so keeping things lined up all the way through is going to make it a lot easier. Yeah, great question. All right, and I will see you on Friday. Yay, that's so exciting. Yes, if you are local or you are passing through, we're open Thursday, Friday, 12 to 4 p.m. here in the store, and Saturday, 12 to 3, and of course online every day. All right, love you, rock stars. See you soon.